Chapter 10. Recovering Your Life. After stroke, it can feel like your life has ended, even though you're still alive. That's because a stroke doesn't affect just your body and mind. It can also take away your independence, career, and hobbies. You'll need to figure out where you can live and what you can do in this new post-stroke life. You may need to find new activities that give you purpose and bring you joy to make you truly feel alive again. To help us understand the process, we've brought in Dr. Janice Monroe, the chair of the Department of Recreation and Leisure Studies at Ithaca College in New York, and the clinical supervisor at the Center for Life Skills, a program serving stroke survivors. We also offer you the expertise of Dr. Amanda Woodward, a social worker, associate professor, and researcher at Michigan State University. Sarah Thompson, a music therapist specializing in stroke, adds valuable insights into how music therapy can enhance recovery, too. Question 72. Many stroke survivors don't want to go home until they're fully recovered. What would you say to someone who doesn't feel he or she is ready to face regular life again? Dr. Hinkle, a lot of people are probably ready to go home before the rehab team thinks they're ready. Recovery from a stroke takes a long time, 6 months, 18 months, or longer. Home is usually the best place to make the most optimal recovery. It makes people nervous, but ultimately they're going to make their best recovery when they're in their normal, familiar environment, doing everyday things for themselves. Home is probably the best thing for them. The other part of this transition is that stroke survivors have to get used to their new normal. Life may never be the same as they knew it before the stroke, and that's okay. Every person who deals with this can find some part of his or her new life that is rewarding and fulfilling.
It took a long time for me to realize my new potential and focus on the positive things, what I can do, not what I cannot do. I may not be able to be a doctor like I wanted, but I can still help people. I started a nonprofit organization to connect people with aphasia. It helps me focus on my abilities. But you don't have to start a nonprofit like I did to stay focused on your abilities. What are the things that helps you stay positive? How do you focus on what you can do? David.
A tip. Reflect on the Serenity Prayer, either as a prayer or as a message that will help you find acceptance and focus on your abilities. God, or highest and wisest self, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What do you have the power to change in your life today? Question 73. How can stroke survivors begin to regain their independence? Dr. Monroe, it's all about focusing on what you can do versus what you can't. It's also really important to be patient with yourself and to be patient with other people while recognizing there will be mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. A lot of times we are so afraid to say or do the wrong thing that we end up saying or doing nothing at all. It's so important to remember what you can still do and build on that. Try to be yourself. Don't define yourself by your disability. Let your friends know that it's a priority for you to be the person that you are. You know that you've changed, but you're still the same person underneath with different abilities. Remember, too, that all of us have some areas where we're dependent. I'm considered able-bodied, but I can't cut my own hair, so I depend on other people to do that for me. That dependency is accentuated a lot more if you have a disability, but don't forget that even before your stroke, you probably couldn't do everything for yourself or perfectly. So be patient with yourself and recognize that you're not going to be able to do everything, because nobody can. Question 74. How can stroke survivors safely and successfully re-enter their communities? Dr. Monroe, this is one of the scariest parts for stroke survivors, not only because of their impaired ability to get around, but also because of the risk of being faced with people who may not be very considerate of their impairments. If your balance is not good and you're in a crowded place, people moving quickly might knock you over. So that's really scary, right? You don't want to fall and hurt yourself. It's important to start out in familiar environments that don't have a lot of obstacles and practice, practice, practice. Find a place that you used to go to that you'd like to revisit, and go with someone who can be there for you if you need assistance, but who knows that you want to do it on your own. Being familiar with alternative modes of transportation and ways to get yourself around can really help with independence. Take a bus or a cab to the place first with someone that you trust, and then do it on your own. Have somebody around that you can call to let him or her know when you get there or if you need help. You don't need to jump back into the world all at once. You need to learn something, practice it, learn something new, practice it, get good at it, and continue on. Baby steps. Author's note: loving caregivers want to keep stroke survivors safe and protect them from harm. However, we all take risks in our lives, and those of us without disabilities get to determine what level of risk is acceptable. Taking risks, getting outside of our comfort zones, and making mistakes are how we learn and improve. Overprotection can impede recovery by eliminating those valuable learning opportunities and making the survivor feel powerless. Try to find a balance between protection and self-determination to restore the dignity of risk in your stroke survivor.
A stroke survivor asks, how can I plan for the future when I don't know how my recovery will go?
Dr. Woodward: it's hard to think about the future, let alone make long-term plans when you're trying to learn how to walk again. It's not a one-time conversation. Planning for the future is part of the recovery process. Perhaps your immediate focus for recovery is learning to walk again, but learning to walk again to what end? Is your goal to go back to work? Maybe you want to use this as an opportunity to do a different kind of work, or maybe it is time to retire. Take the opportunity to look at your future in a different way. Maybe your goal is to get back to exactly what you were doing and the life that you had before, but maybe it's something different. Finding some time to think about the future is integral to the overall recovery process and helpful for staying motivated and having goals to work toward. Obviously, the future is going to look different for people of different ages and at different stages in their careers. Rehab professionals and social workers can help you plan for that future and help you understand what the options are. Talking to other stroke survivors who've been in your shoes, as well as to professionals, can help you understand the resources available to lay out different options for you. Question 75. How can stroke survivors manage financial stress while they're recovering? Dr. Woodward: this is a question that people often put off thinking about, but as soon as it's feasible, you need to start thinking about finances. Even though it's hard, dealing with it sooner rather than later will actually help alleviate some of the stress in the long term. Create a budget and prioritize your expenses. You need to keep paying your health insurance premiums. Talk with your landlord or your lender early on if you think you're going to have issues with paying. Let him or her know what has happened and see if he or she can help you figure out options. One of the things a social worker will do is assess all of your current and anticipated needs in order to help you figure out what has to be addressed and to connect you with available resources. There are local and federal housing assistance programs and other programs that can help you pay your utilities or get food. You can call 211, just like 911, to get help with figuring out what resources are available in your community. There's also a website, www.211.org, where you can enter your zip code to find local resources and help you navigate the maze of options. Question 76. What percentage of stroke survivors return to work? Dr. Roth: the figures are terrible, frankly. It's estimated that about 1/3 of people will go back to work following a stroke. Even in programs that focus heavily on pushing people to get back to work, where all the therapy is directed toward work issues, that number maybe gets pushed as high as 50%. In rehabilitation, we've made lots of progress with helping people learn how to walk, use their arms, take care of themselves, and to a lesser extent get back into the community. But we have not done as much as we should have with helping stroke survivors return to work. Work can be part of recovery. Work can be therapy in a lot of ways. If you're getting up and going to work, whether it's a part-time job or a full-time job, you're being forced to use your brain on a consistent basis and be more physically active. My observation is that people who are back at work are less likely to get medical illnesses, spend less time in the hospital, and have fewer other problems. They seem to be less depressed too, probably because they feel like they're contributing more. There are lots of good objective medical reasons to go back to work, in addition to it being good to get back to your normal life and earn a paycheck. Question 77. What are the barriers to returning to work? Dr. Roth. There are many reasons why stroke survivors have difficulty returning to work. One reason is discrimination and prejudice on the part of employers. Another is the lack of accessibility. Physical accessibility, as well as breaking down attitudinal barriers of employers. A more hidden reason is that medical professionals and communities at large do not have enough of an expectation that stroke survivors can and should be working. I was part of a team researching employment for people with strokes. To help people get back to work, we started focusing on the employers. We worked directly with the companies to get them thinking about what modifications for people with strokes may be needed, required by law, and reasonable. We got a lot of interest from high-level executives in companies, which we thought was a great thing. However, it turns out that what matters most is not what the corporate philosophy is, but what the immediate supervisors and coworkers think, what their attitudes are. If they're prejudiced, bitter, or resentful in any way, then there's a problem. Of course, most clinicians aren't really thinking about that in the rehab process, but that ends up driving much of the success for people returning to work. There are laws that prohibit this kind of discrimination, so you can fight it, but you have to recognize when that's the problem. Question 78. If a stroke survivor can't return to work, what can he or she do? Dr. Monroe. In our society, we are defined by what we do for work. When you don't work, it's really important to be able to replace that identity with something else. You need to find meaningful activity that gives you purpose. If a stroke survivor is not working, he or she may have more free time, at least after all the doctor's appointments are over. To gain back your confidence, it's important to find things that do keep you engaged physically, mentally, cognitively, and socially. There may be activities that enable you to get back into the workplace, if that is a goal, or they may just be activities that are meaningful, provide you with purpose, and give you a new sense of identity. Dr. Carmichael. A great example of a man who's very active in stroke recovery is Reems Friedman in Southern California. He suffered a stroke and now runs the Stroke Association of Southern California, a volunteer stroke survivor network. I'm sure if you had sat him down 20 years ago and asked if he was going to be doing this sort of thing, he would have said, no way. But he really took charge and has been integral in a lot of people's recoveries and lives. So there are certainly opportunities that open up to patients with impairments after a stroke that weren't there before. Question 79. How can stroke survivors find new activities? Dr. Monroe. Identify your strengths as well as your goals. Then find recreational activities you can do independently or with a little support that make use of those strengths. As you engage in these activities successfully, you'll build confidence and motivation to try other new things. Ask yourself what you enjoy doing. If you have a good recreational therapist, he or she can find a way to get you back into any activity that you enjoy doing, or find something very similar that makes use of your abilities and interests. There are modifications you can make to sporting equipment, assistive devices for helping people with mobility, and other creative and low-tech ways to eliminate barriers. It may be that you have to add duct tape to a pencil to make it easier to grip, or use a simple wooden card holder so you can play cards with one hand. Computers can be used for socialization and communication if somebody isn't able to get out into the community as much.
I think hobbies are good for people. Sometimes there are ways to adopt that you may not have realized. For example, if you go online and search for one-handed fishing or one-handed crocheting, you will likely find some tips. I have a one-handed card holder to help me play cards. Return to hobbies you used to love or find new ones. Find hobbies you can still enjoy. These can become part of your therapy. David.
A tip. David's stroke reminds me of how precious life is and how lucky we are that he is happy and healthy. Perhaps you have a similar experience as a stroke survivor or family member. Don't waste life by zoning out on the couch all day. No matter your current level of ability, take advantage of this precious day. Connect, enjoy, stop existing, and start living. Question 80. What is recreational therapy, and how can it help with stroke recovery? Dr. Monroe. Therapeutic recreation, or recreational therapy, is a whole field of rehabilitation that uses recreation and other activity-based interventions to address the needs of people with illness and/or disabling conditions. We look at people from a holistic perspective, addressing their physical, cognitive, emotional, social, and leisure needs. It's a strength-oriented approach, so it's really about focusing on what people can do as opposed to focusing on what they can't do. Then it's about using those strengths to engage them in activities that they enjoy and then building on their skills. Most well-established rehabilitation facilities offer recreational therapy. Recreational therapy is not included in the 3-hour rule, which requires facilities to provide 3 hours of daily physical, occupational, or speech therapy. But recreational therapy can be part of the whole rehabilitative process. We're the youngest of the therapies, so we're still trying to make headway into places. Stroke survivors should ask for it because it has incredible benefits. When people lose part of their functioning, they don't feel like they can do anything well anymore. Their definition of themselves has been changed because their abilities have changed. It's important to enable them to try things in a safe environment. When you're playing games, it's not that big of a deal if you lose. When people have fun, they're more likely to do activities. We work as part of the rehab team. To help with communication, recreational therapy provides opportunities for socialization to take place through group activities, singing, games, and community outings. We use the strategies provided by the speech-language pathologist to help those with communication problems participate. For physical recovery, we work with the physical therapist to learn what exercises or body positions the stroke survivor is working on, and then find activities the person can do to practice those skills. Every activity that we use is carefully selected to enable clients to practice the skills they need to practice. We identify their strengths to get them engaged in the activities, but then we build on those strengths to develop skills in the areas where there are some weaknesses. A game like Monopoly may be used to practice fine motor control, learning to grip, move small pieces, or turn over cards. It can be used to target cognitive functioning. When do I buy? When do I sell? Do I need a hotel? How many spaces do I move? We can work on social skills, like knowing when to take a turn and how to react to wins and losses. Bocce is a fun game that can be played indoors or outdoors. It's really good for things like range of motion, standing balance, and moving around to get the balls back once you've thrown them. If the affected arm has the ability to grip a ball even slightly, we would use the affected side. We constantly remind our survivors that even if the affected side doesn't feel like it's doing much, they should still lift it up and put it on the table to give it sensory input. If the affected side is weak, we will oftentimes provide hand-over-hand assistance to help them use it, or we'll let them use the hand of choice to be more successful. Typically, we start using the non-affected side to get survivors engaged in the activities and then encourage them to bring the other side into the game. It can be a bit sneaky. Because people see recreational therapy as just fun, they sometimes don't want to do it, especially if they're in the early stages of stroke recovery. They're just focused on wanting to walk, dress, or talk. They don't yet understand that these skills transfer and can be practiced in other ways. We make sure people understand the meaning and purpose of our activities, what the goals are, and why we selected the activities. Our hardest job as recreational therapists can be to help people understand that we are not just playing games, but that through these activities, games, or outdoor pursuits, they're actually building skills that will enable them to do other things in their lives more effectively. 100 activities and hobbies to consider. It's important to fill your days with meaningful and enjoyable activities to keep your mind and body active. If you're not spending every day at work or in therapy, consider trying a new activity or taking up a hobby you never had time to pursue. The next time you think, I'm bored, browse this list for ideas. Acting, audiobooks or podcasts, auto repair, Bible study or book clubs, billiards or pool, bird watching, blogging or keeping a journal, board games, boating and sailing, bowling, cake decorating, calligraphy, camping or traveling in an RV, candle or soap making, canning or preserving food, card games like solitaire, poker, and bridge, ceramics, pottery, or sculpture, chatting online, church, synagogue, or mosque, collage or decoupage, collecting stamps, coins, or shells, computers or technology, cooking or baking, cross-country skiing or snowshoeing, cutting coupons or bargain hunting, cycling, dancing, dog training or walking, dominoes or mahjong, drawing, embroidery or cross-stitch, environmental cleanup, family and friends, fantasy sports leagues, fishing or hunting, fitness, flower arranging or bonsai, galleries and museums, gardening, genealogy, hairstyling or makeup, home brewing beer, home decorating or improvement, horseback riding, ice skating or inline skating, investing, jewelry making, juggling or twirling, kayaking or canoeing, kite flying or frisbee, knitting, crocheting or macrame, lawn work, learning foreign languages, magic tricks, making scrapbooks, martial arts including Tai Chi, meditation, mentoring in Big Brothers or Sisters or the Scouts, metal detecting, models, motorcycles, music appreciation and concerts, musical instruments, origami, painting, watercolors or coloring, photography, playing sports like golf, tennis, or team sports, political advocacy or fundraising, printmaking or letter sending, puppetry, puzzles like jigsaw, crossword, or Sudoku, reading, rock climbing or rappelling, role-play games, scuba diving or snorkeling, sewing or quilting, shopping, singing, skiing or snowboarding, sledding or tubing, social media, stained glass making or glass blowing, stand-up comedy or storytelling, surfing the web, swimming, taking classes, tarot cards or fortune-telling, theater, opera, or ballet, traveling or sightseeing, video production or editing, video, computer, or arcade games, volunteering, walking, running, or hiking, weaving, website design, weightlifting, wine appreciation, woodworking or carving, writing, yoga. Question 81. What is music therapy and how can it help stroke survivors? Ms. Thompson. Music therapy is the use of music to maximize a person's functioning in different areas of his or her life. Music and music therapy techniques can help stroke survivors improve their communication, sensory or motor functioning, and cognitive abilities. Neuroscientists have long studied how music is processed in the brain, and we've discovered that music is very robust. It tends to stick around in the brain after an injury or stroke, even when other abilities are impaired. Music isn't just one thing. It has rhythm, melody, harmony, and lyrics, among other elements. Each of these is processed differently in the brain. A music therapist uses certain techniques to manipulate those elements of music to create therapeutic change as part of a larger therapy team. I commonly hear people say, "I'm not good at music. I'm not a musician." I tell people, your brain's already hardwired for music. It doesn't matter if you're good at music or not. That's not the goal. We can use rhythm to help people get more symmetry in their steps for walking. Survivors can learn to adjust the size of their steps to be better able to change speeds and walk in their environment in general. To get the upper extremity moving after a stroke, we can use musical instruments. We might have people reach out to hit a drum, and that drum gives them feedback about how they move. So if they move slowly and hit without a lot of force, they'll hear a light tap on the drum versus a loud bang, which they would hear if they really punched their arm out there. That is good information to help with proprioception, or awareness of where the arm is in space, something that is often damaged by a stroke. We're making use of the auditory system, which works really quickly to inform the motor system. If people are trying to get fingers moving, then we may use a keyboard or piano to help with that. Essentially, we're using instruments to help the brain and arm reconnect and help the brain understand what the outcome of the movement is. Some people with aphasia can sing entire songs even when they can't otherwise get their words out. It's quite incredible, and it can be very emotional for family members to see their loved ones singing. The music therapist can then work with the speech therapist to help the patient use music as a scaffold for speaking without the music. The music is used to jumpstart the brain and form new connections, and often we start to see more spontaneous improvement. With slurred speech, we use rhythm to create more separation between the words so that people can be more clearly understood. We can also use music to help with attention. A music therapist may have a person listen for certain elements and block out others. Music can help with memory as well, helping people keep steps in order or learn new things. Remember, we all learn the alphabet with a song. Sometimes music therapists will write songs for people around certain procedures or sequences of things that they need to do for daily functioning. For example, a stroke survivor in a wheelchair needs to remember all the steps for transferring to another chair safely. They've got to lock the brakes on the wheelchair, scoot to the edge, stand up, swivel around, and all the other things. Sometimes I get called in by occupational or physical therapists to put together a song with all the steps for someone having difficulty remembering. People remember words and songs a lot better than words without music. Music therapy can be started as soon as other therapies begin, a few days to a week post-stroke. There are benefits to starting early, but music therapy can be helpful at all stages of recovery. You can find music therapists through the American Music Therapy Association at musictherapy.org or through the Certification Board for Music Therapists at cbmt.org. Check local hospitals, outpatient clinics, and stroke support groups to see if there are music therapists providing services. Unfortunately, Medicare does not cover music therapy for stroke survivors, but private insurance may pay for music therapy on a case-by-case basis. Health savings accounts or flexible spending accounts can be used to cover music therapy services. In Denver, we work with the local stroke association to offer low-cost group therapy sessions. Even if you don't have access to music therapy, we can all use music to help us through things when we're not in a good place. A lot of times you find that song with the right words or the right feeling to express what you can't, and it can be so helpful. We can also use music to motivate and lift our spirits. Music with a faster tempo, something upbeat with a good rhythm can get us moving. If you get the right song, it will perk you up just the same as a cup of coffee. Listen to the music you connect with to match or lift your mood. Takeaway points. A stroke will change your life. You will need to find your new normal. Be patient with yourself. It's okay to make mistakes. You can't do everything perfectly, but could you ever? Take baby steps to getting back into the community. Go out with support at first, then build your independence as you practice and gain confidence. Planning is part of the recovery process, and plans may change along the way. Nobody knows what the future holds. Get help in knowing what your options are, and don't put off thinking about finances. Unfortunately, few stroke survivors return to work. For those who can, work provides therapeutic challenges and gives people purpose. For those who can't, it's important to find another meaningful activity to keep you motivated. Use your strengths to find recreational activities to keep you engaged. A recreational therapist can help you adapt your hobbies or find new ones. Music therapy can improve communication, mobility, and cognition through rhythm, melody, and song. You can use the power of music to lift your mood, regulate your walking, or get the words flowing.